Mic. Mic check. Mic. Okay, there we go. Mic. Hello, guys. I'm finally here.
Hello, sir.
All right.
Good afternoon.
All right. Well, sorry for the delay. Apart from just regular scheduling mayhem that's happening, it also I'm plowing through some technical challenges as well. But we resolved most of them, so we're good to go. Still might experience some delays trying to figure out why there's a lag, but I'll solve that another time. But in the meantime, so welcome to your, I guess you could say, your first official class. No, second actually. Just confirming. So everybody here is either from the second session, meaning the 12 o'clock class, or the evening class, kind of merged together for this 4 o'clock class. Am I right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, good to go. So, we have like about 3 things to do today, and we're going to get through them. It should be pretty quick, so we'll get the ball rolling. The first thing is kind of an introduction. I need to bring up my. There we go. Bring up my PowerPoint. Oh, I might have to configure the screens. Let's see here. There we go. All right. Oh, why did it open 3? Okay. All right. Probably just the auto recovery. Okay, there we go. And I'm just gonna configure my my screens real quick. Slideshow. And I will say this monitor is my main monitor. So let's see how it is. All right. Alrighty. I'm sorry, I had to reboot, so everything that I had open, I kind of just had to close them. So forgive me while I just kind of reset up myself here. And open up back all the things that were originally closed. And there we go. All right. Okay. So I think the colors are a little bit off. I'm not sure what's causing that, but I'll adjust that another time. But let me know in terms of the blurriness. I'm basically going to have to pick between things being very sharp but stuttery, or things being very smooth but maybe blurry. So I'm going to be switching between the two. So if at any time you recognize that it is not sharp enough to read, you can let me know. So you guys are seeing my screen now, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So, well, one of the things that we want to accomplish today is I want to finally meet you guys. Technically, I haven't met you yet, because when we met on Monday, we were kind of just rushing and going through everything and just trying to get ourselves organized for the semester. That usually happens at the first week. So don't be surprised if you even see some schedules being switched up, right? Um, but in the meantime, I'm going to also introduce myself because I just kind of went through and said I'm Brian Williams and kind of just dodged through. So you guys are going into computing for the first time, so you would have possibly been meeting me for the first time. So my name is Brian Williams. I am pretty much a computing lecturer. I'm in charge of all of the computing modules at CSA. So I'm pretty much the one that kind of charts your development through digital technology throughout all of your CSA tenure. So the last class I kind of showed you this kind of progression that you guys would have gone through, right? And you guys are basically at the first step of that progression, right? And I want to just kind of give you an idea of who would be guiding you. So I'm gonna just in another window right here quickly just open up this website here. So, all right, so this is pretty much my you could call it my digital resume that I have online. Pretty much after this module, everybody will more than likely have one of these for themselves. A part of what we do here in DDM is we show you guys how to create a web presence, and that might be in the form of a digital resume or an online portfolio or something like that. So a little bit about me. I am a visualization specialist, which means I specialize in visualization, particularly for architecture. Visualization not only includes fancy things like animations and that stuff, it also includes ways of representing architecture. So, for example, if I show you some of the stuff here, well, so like obviously there is visualization stuff like this where it's 3D, but also there is other parts of Viz that exist. For example, like having to do with presentations, right? What's the best way to communicate an idea, right? And it might not be a 3D rendering, it might be a presentation plan, it might be some kind of an informational graphics, or it might be 3D related. A part of what I do as a visualization specialist is, for example, I may develop kind of zoom in, see if I can zoom for you guys. Oh, maybe that's too much. Yeah, that's all right. So I may, for example, develop ways in which you can connect various software together to get a particular output, being able to extract certain information from certain software and reuse that within architecture. So generating things from 3D images to maybe drawings that has to do with sections and working drawings, all the way to animated things. All of that falls under the umbrella of visualization. and that umbrella is where I thrive, right? Let me go over here to a little bit about me here. So, and how I got here was primarily of my interests, love of buildings. Maybe you guys can share a similar sentiment, but also a love of technology, right? Some of you here, you're getting introduced to the computer for the first time, so maybe um, we're seeing where you might find some interest in using the computer. Also have a love for graphics and digital media, and all of that kind of comes together in architecture. In architecture, this is something that we use all the time, and I am the person that will take you through this journey. All right. So that is pretty much me in a nutshell. I also attended CSA. Um, I did the undergrad there, and I also came back and did the masters in a couple of years. And now I operate a architectural visualization business in Jamaica. It's called Imaginet Studios Limited, and we do all sorts of things that's primarily about visualization, including drawings and all that stuff. So that is pretty much me. Now, I'm going to meet you guys a little later, but before we do that, I just want to kind of jump into a little bit of what we will be doing in DDM, right? Um, okay. So what exactly is digital media? By the way, is my volume too low? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I guess you can always turn up your device, but we just need to balance between both. Right. So, what exactly is digital design? I'm going this way, so make life easier. Right. And I always start with this because digital design don't necessarily means that you jump into 3D and rendering and all that fancy stuff. It starts with something as simple as floor plans. And most of you probably recognize this floor plan already. I mean, this is an architectural floor plan, but it's also a part of digital design media. It is a type of digital media that helps us with design. So this is also a floor plan, but let's see, I'm gonna call some names now. Orlando, are you here? Are you alive? Are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right, good. So what do you think is the difference between this floor plan and this one? I mean, visually there's a difference, but how would you describe these two differences?
One of more like visual representation. That's like the main difference, I think.
Uh-huh.
Well, visual representation basically covers everything with the colors, the rendering.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. So yeah. So this is also a type of digital media as well, but clearly there is a use case for this type of media and there's a use case for this. But it not only starts or begins with 2D floor plans, we also have 3D floor plans, right? And everything that you see under this umbrella is things that we want to start introducing you guys to, right? So 3D floor plans are also a part of digital media and it has its uses as well. So let's continue. And even in the world of marketing, especially in the world of marketing, and when you really think about it, marketing is really just a way of communicating, right? We have any persons from Mobi in the house? Any Bay people? No? No Bay people? All right, cool. So this development is in Montego Bay, but in order for these units to be sold, they needed to communicate to the potential buyers with what exactly they are spending their millions of dollars on. And you can kind of see, I'm looking for my zoom button here. Give me a second. Do that, and there we go. And we also need presenter's view. Yeah, there we go. All right. Sorry, I'm just getting myself organized here. Right. So we're able to look on things. For example, we know what the interior would look like. We know what the exterior would look like. And we also can get an idea of what the environment would look like. So, we also know what the floor plans look like and where the floor plans are. So this is kind of like a combination of various ways of communicating all sorts of information, both visually and from a text standpoint. And yes, this is also a part of digital media as well, right? Check out these two images, right? Well, I guess if I asked you guys which one is real and which one is not real, you could tell me, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. And this is also one of the uses of digital media where if you're going to spend a lot of money to change the facade of a building and it's going to be something that is striking, you definitely want to feel confidence in your design and how it works with the surroundings. So digital media is also used for this again, which is photo montage. So you see, we work our way, come all the way down from what we would consider architectural drawings, and we're going into other realms. For example, when we look at this site plan here, it looks like it might be a little bit blurry for you guys, but right. So when you look on this site plan here, the information you see here is not just communicating the fact that there's a building here and there's a road here and all that stuff. This now starts to give you additional hints. So for example, who can tell me what exactly do these lines represent? I think I need a smaller arrow for these things. There we go. Right. What do you think these lines that we see here represent? Anybody?
The contours.
Exactly. And what does that tell us about the site?
That it has slopes. It slopes down or up.
Exacto. So it's giving us that information. But in addition to that, based on the color scheme and how everything is, we can realize that this isn't probably in a rural environment, or at least an environment that's not the city. So, which it kind of gives across this green kind of feel, right? And that is also a part of what you want to communicate with digital media. It's not just about the fact that they are, this building is building 93 and it's located here. It's additional things like, well, building 93 is going to be on a slope. Maybe we don't know the exact slope, but we also can tell that, like the buildings are kind of organically laid out. It's not like this very streamlined, maybe housing scheme vibe. Then because of the color, we know that it should be very lush. That's what it's representing here. So there's other information that is being communicated in addition to straightforward, just pragmatic information like numbers and all that stuff. Now, also, when we think of this, and this is like a combination of, maybe zooming too much there. There we go. This is like a combination of different forms of media. We can kind of see where we have the information about, where everything is. So for example, there might be 7 particular units of a type.
6 p.m.
We also can get an idea of the features that's here, where it's located. But what really evokes that emotion for us to use our imagination is when we visualize, which is what is represented here, right down this side. So, digital media kind of becomes this catalyst that activates our imagination. Because as you guys perhaps discovered in all of first year, that architecture is just way more than just drawing floor plans, right? It's much more. It's about the environment, it's about people. This is also about evoking your imagination. What if you lived here? What if you had this casino here? What if this is what you woke up to every day? All of those things you're able to convey by using digital media, right? So there you go. Right, so, and we gotta zoom out first, right? And another big part of digital media as well is layout. So for example, you need to communicate all of this text information here. You also have plans, and you have images, and you have some information that's more important than others. How do you lay all of this out? And this is going to be a part of what we talk about in digital media. It also has to do with how you lay out information. What's the best way to lay out this information so that we can understand where we are? Right? And I mean, all of what we're discussing here is in the field of architecture, right? So that even if we look at a presentation like this, what if we wanted to present a design idea? What's the best way to show that? Perhaps we will have a colored plan here. We have some information about the building here. Then we have a photorealistic image here. I mean, instantly, this image down here sells you the vision, the kind of imagination of what your design is. And you can already see why photorealism is such a big part of digital media, because it activates your imagination, right? But that's not the only part. I mean, we also need to communicate what the room looks like, where everything is, and we need to tell, what are we looking at. We need to have some kind of title, some kind of information. So all of this is are things that we need to consider, and all of this forms a part of digital media. But there's more. We talk about interiors, about interior design. I mean, we can use this to say, okay, this is what my design will feel like. When you see an image like this, you can say, oh wow, okay, yes, I see what your design feels like. But also we're communicating the textures and the different materials that are also used. And another one we're going to look at is one that is not necessarily photorealistic but representational. You might look at an image like this and say, it looks like something that I would see maybe in an art gallery, like it looks very like artistic and what's the word? Kind of like a collage. And even an image like this is conveying a whole lot of information. I mean, it's telling you, these lines are telling you something about this image, these bold lines here. Obviously, this big red element in the middle, it's telling you something. And then other things like, it's like a mixture of things that are in the imagination, but also things that can't necessarily be explained pragmatically, like, this wall is 10 foot high. This is also invoking a sense of feel. What does this street feel like? Boy, this street feels very lonely. It feels like I'm in this canal, surrounded by this building. So all of those we can evoke with just looking at digital media in different ways, right? And this is very different than other stuff that we look at. And what I want to end on is a big part of digital media has to do with animation, right? So I mean, that so moving images, it immediately kind of connects with how we experience architecture. And this kind of digital media has also become a big part of architecture, especially in selling the idea, right? So all this is cool stuff, and this is all stuff that we're going to be looking on throughout all of your computing journey with us here. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the course structure, right? What is it that we are going to learn? So overall, the course is going to be divided into 4 units, right? In unit 1, we're going to talk about the use of digital design media. We're actually having this conversation now because we're actually in unit 1, Unit 2, we're going to focus on 2D tools. So we're going to look at things like text and images and how we can use the technology to convey that in different ways. And then unit 3, we're going to look at 3-dimensional media. So we're going to actually be using SketchUp, and we're going to be kind of introduced to using 3D in digital media. And in unit 4, we're going to basically put it all together, right? And combine all of them in on a website, which is going to be similar to the website that I've showed you of myself, right? All right, so any questions so far? How are you guys feeling? Are you feeling excited or more worried?
I'm here for the journey.
You're here for the journey. All right, cool. I don't know. Samantha, how are you feeling about DDM so far?
It's interesting so far.
Okay. I'm glad I'm hearing words like interesting and journey. I'm not hearing any words like scary or anything like that just yet, right? Well, DDM is a big part of architecture, so let's just embrace it. Digital media is going to play a big part. All right, so let's continue. So in unit 1, we're going to talk about how architects use digital media, which is literally the conversation we're having now. But the other conversation we're going to have is about digital tools, right? And how we're going to use and understanding the tools that we use, right? And that is coming up in just a bit. Speaking of that, let me double check that I'm recording here. Am I recording? I think I am. Yes, I am. Okay, good. In unit 2, we're going to learn Photoshop, and we're going to do 2 exercises with Photoshop. Then we're going to move on to Illustrator, and we're going to do 2 exercises with Illustrator, right? And unit 3, when we move to 3D, we're going to do another exercise using SketchUp. And then we're going to check out an assignment where we put all of it together to complete a particular task, right? So that's pretty straightforward here, right? Then in unit 4, which is basically combining all of these together, we are going to look at the world of the web and how we can leverage the internet to help us to show our digital media. We had to go through 2 years of you guys using the internet to show your work, right? And I mean, we've been doing DDM long before COVID. So talk about practice what you preach, right? So that's going to form a big part of what we do here, right? In terms of the class, this is how everything is going to lay out. The 5 exercises are going to be 10%. The assignment is going to be 25%. Then we're going to learn about sheet layout, which is going to be 15%. All right, so that's going to be, when you look on your portal, you'll see that called portfolio. And the great thing about the portfolio is that you're going to be designing the sheets that you're going to use in your design studio, but you're going to do it from DDM. So that's pretty cool because, you know, use one bird, kill 2 stones, right? So that lessens your work pressure because you get to be graded for something in one module and you can reuse that thing in another module. Class participation is going to be tied to your final project grade. So when you look in your student portal, you're going to see this represented as 50%, but 10% of it is really through class participation. And guess what? I call this class participation 2.0, right? What do I mean by that? So 2.0. So version 1 of class participation was just you showing up in class, right? But since things have moved online, it's very easy for you to show up, but you're not really here, if you understand what I mean. So class participation 2.0 is going to be based on how you participate in the activities for the class. And there's going to be about 5 different activities, or maybe 6, you know, it varies. And the more activities you participate in is the higher your class participation grade will be. All right, so is everybody clear on this layout for the module?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I guess you answered for the whole class, right? All right, now in digital design, you quite possibly will have technical challenges. It's perfectly normal. I'm gonna just move this mic here because it's totally in my way. It's perfectly normal to have technical challenges. So there are 2 resources that I'm going to recommend for that, right? The first one is the CSA Lab Tech, and the CSA Lab Tech is in the lab. They don't normally give out their numbers, so you can find them in the lab. And the other one is Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell works in my office, and every year I beg him to lend me his expertise to help my students if they have any technical challenges, they need to access particular software and things like that, right? So anything you need in that regards, you can contact any of those two persons. For the lab tech, you need to physically go to him. I don't really think it's a part of the job description, so I don't think you guys should go there and demand that they help you to solve the technical problems, right? As it relates to Mr. Campbell, he will, if you need like access to something or a software or something, he will more likely just send you a link. I don't think you have to like physically go anywhere, and he usually doesn't charge for that. But of course, if something happens, like your laptop explodes or something, we need to like fix it, you know, that's obviously going to be way more time, right? So keep that in mind. This number is a WhatsApp number, so don't call him, WhatsApp him. He's a WhatsApp kind of person, all right? So I'm just going to let this just dangle there for a little bit so that you guys can just jot that one down in your phones, right? Okay. All right. So
one little question before: where do we find the technicians or the lab with the technician?
Well, put it this way: if you know where the CSA lab is, right?
We were in a lab once, but I'm not sure if it's the CSA lab specifically. It was on the second floor, I believe.
Yes, you are correct.
Okay.
So if the lab is open, the technician should be in there, and if the lab is locked, that means the technician is not there. So automatically, once the lab is open, well, they should be in the office. Sometimes they are not, so don't quote me on that. All right. Sometimes they might open the lab and they go for a walk or something. All right.
Okay.
So the module website is csa-utechjamaica.org, right? This website is going to become very familiar with you guys. This is your first computing class, so it's pretty new now, but computing has always kind of operated online long before COVID. So we kind of have a strong online presence, and most of our work is collected via forms. Everything is stored in the cloud. So you know, we have been COVID proof for a while, pretty much, except for one module that we need to go on a measured survey. Obviously, that one got hit pretty bad, but pretty much everything else was online, and this is the website that we operate from, right? We also have module emails. I think I explained this in the last class. So the one for DDM is utech.csa.ddm@gmail.com. Some of you would have probably gotten an email with the welcome email already. All right, so just share that amongst yourself. Right. You can also email me personally at my personal UTech email, which is brian.williams@utech.edu.jm as well. But sometimes for DDM we have multiple lecturers, so when you send it to this email, both lecturers has access to the email, right? All right, so that is pretty much it. So that is what we're going to be doing for the semester, all right? Now we do have two more things that I want us to get through, right? Yes, now. There. All right. Now you would have already been familiar with the class. Oh, hold on. Okay, Bent, you have a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, what is I'm doing at work, right? And the software decided to fry my laptop motherboard.
The
Right?
software decide to fry your laptop.
Motherboard, yeah. Like just burn it up.
Oh wow.
You take lab, I'm able to do the work at the lab. If that happens.
That is a very good question. So the lab is fully open and ready for you guys. So if you don't already have a computer, you just go in the lab and you just jump on Zoom and you will be in the class just the same. Right?
Alright, good.
It's kind of ironic, but even though I might be on campus sometimes, it's easier for me to teach from my location here because I have everything already set up. And you know, who knows, not everybody will be on campus for 3D modeling. Sorry, not for 3D modeling, for DDM. But nevertheless, the lab is open, so you can just go in, jump on the website, click on the link, and you will be up and running. All right. All right. Now, so most of you are supposed to be familiar with this site already. So when I go to the website, I'm going to put in the password, which is DDM 2023. And that will carry us into the website. If my internet connection will provide. Come on. Okay, let's refresh this. DDM 2023. There we go. Now, when you go on the class website, at the top there is a course timeline. So this is pretty much your schedule for the entire semester. So if you don't remember when something is due, you just come up here and you just scroll across and you can see, you know, on September 21st, we're going to be doing exercise 3, and, you know, portfolio assignment is going to be given out on October 10 and it's due November 7. So everything is pretty much here. Some things might change depending on the weather, literally, because sometimes the weather will cause time to change. And that's it. So you can use this to kind of scroll across and you can zoom in to see more information and zoom out. So this is going to be at the top of every module for CSA, every computing module. The websites look a little similar, they vary slightly, but all of them have this register for class here. And it will have the course timeline at the top, right? Usually we try to put the links for the class at the top. So I'm pretty much going to be your lecturer for the entire DDM module. So there's a link for the lecture session and a link for the practical session. It's the same link for all practical sessions. All right. So, you know, feel free to join for from the morning session or the afternoon session. What I will say though is that hopefully don't leave one session totally empty, because, you know, we can't really have a class with 2 people or 3 people. So the real reason we kind of split everything was so that we have 2, you know, nice size classes. And then you guys get a little bonus time. So at least for some of us. At the top is the class whiteboard link. We're going to be using this in just a little bit, but this represents, you know, like a real whiteboard that we would have in an actual classroom. And we're actually going to use this today, but we're coming to that in a bit. You can check your grades right here. Whenever I mark something, I will post the grades here. Oh crap, this is actually showing last year's grades. So I'm going to update that link so it shows this year. But, you know, all your exercise grades, your assignment grades, portfolio grades, and the breakdown, everything will be right here. So you have full transparency as to why you got the grade you got. All right. These windows that you see here are the different assessments. So we can see that we have the exercises. Let's go again. Right, we can see that we have the exercises right here. And so far, exercise 1, 2, and 3 are available to get done. We're going to start doing that next week. The rest of them are coming soon. I mean, they exist already, but, you know, sometimes we kind of upgrade them. You know, sometimes them too easy and have to make it harder. sometimes it's too hard and I have to make it easier. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes, right? If I scroll down, you can see that we have a class participation. So you can use this to keep track of if you did participate in activities or not. And then we have these activities that we're going to take place. Activity 1, 2, 3. There are 5 activities now. So that is how you take part in those activities. And then we have the module outline, which is all the way at the bottom, which basically kind of repeats everything that I said in the presentation earlier. All right. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, sometimes, let me scroll back down. There's other cool content here. For example, the presentations that we're doing today, there are PDFs, links to them. So in case you missed out, we can go back through these, which is pretty cool, right? So we're going to tackle all of these things later on. All right. Okay. Now, the second thing that we want to do today is we want to talk about the tools that we use in digital media, right? I mean, if you think about it, some of the tools that think about the carpenter or the mechanic, right? They are probably fully aware of a screwdriver that is a cheap screwdriver that we mash up in a week versus a good quality screwdriver. A carpenter would maybe know the different types of planes that they use. For us in this industry doing digital media, it's going to be important for us to know of the different tools that we use, right? And for us, our tools is kind of divided into 2 parts. We have the actual tangible tools that you can touch, like a computer or a laptop. And then we have the soft tools that we can't really touch, like the program that runs on the computer. So for us, we need to know both of these tools. We need to know a little bit about the computer hardware, and we need to know a little bit about the software. I mean, think about it. If you know absolutely nothing about the computer, but you know everything about Photoshop, I mean, what if the computer freezes or stop working or slow down? You know, how are you going to help yourself? If you need to buy something for it, what is it that you're going to buy? You need to know, what are the, at minimum, what components the computer have. Any of us here have had the computer slow down or just be really crappy, especially when it's a deadline day? Anybody has experienced that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And the other thing is that well, it always seems to happen when it's a deadline day. That just sucks. But also, one of the worst things is that something is up with your computer and you say, I think I need to buy more RAM. And you spend a decent amount of money buying more RAM and then nothing happens. It still behaves the same way and you would have wasted money. Or even worse, maybe you buy the wrong RAM or something. So that's why our starting point for DDM is for you guys to understand how your tools work, right? We don't need you to be computer scientists and, be able to manufacture computer parts, but at minimum, knowing everything about the computer and nothing about the software is a no-no. And the inverse is also a no-no. And a lot of times we end up with very skilled people that know absolutely nothing about the computer, and then when the computer starts to fail them, that they're not able to execute their skill, because the skill depends on the hardware, right? So we start to think of, if the computer is not working, like, what do I need? Do I need more RAM? Do I need a bigger hard drive? We have all of these stories, these questions that are floating around. You have a bridging that say, oh yeah man, you just need a faster CPU, or even worse, you need a new laptop. When maybe you could have just changed one part and your laptop is good as new. So what we're going to do now is, we're not going to learn everything about computer. I mean, pretty much I can assume everybody here has done IT in school. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So, when we used to swap the book for what is ROM and what is RAM and all of these things, and you repeated what you learned, and you get your one in IT and all of that. But yet still, when the computer blue screen or crashes, like, it's not the same type of knowledge that you're using to solve these problems. So what we're going to focus on is the more practical part of learning about the computer that is directly linked to digital design. And the other important thing is that a lot of persons, being that this is your first computer class, a lot of you get ready to purchase your first computer, your first major investment. And I mean, nowadays a computer is maybe costing about no less than 100,000 for a computer for computing, that's for sure. So it is a major investment. So if you're going to spend a bunch of money, you want to make sure that you at least know what you're spending. And that is why it's so important that you guys learn the basics of what you're looking for. This is the starting point for your computing journey. So it's important to know that. All right. So, the first thing to get out of the way is that a desktop and a laptop pretty much have the same components, right? So it's all that's different is the form that it comes in. One comes in a way more compact form where everything is built in. Anybody here have an all-in-one printer versus having a printer different from a scanner, different from photocopier? Nowadays, a lot of these things come all in one, and that's essentially what the laptop does. However, the general idea is that because a laptop is more compact, the components that are inside them are going to be a bit more, are going to prioritize things like portability and minimum power usage, which means that the performance might be different than a desktop that don't really care about power usage because it plugs into the wall and it doesn't have to run off a battery. Nevertheless, both of them have the same components inside, and the components that we want to pay the most attention to are these components. And we don't want to really get into the textbook definition for what these are, but rather what we want to do is we want to just average them down to the main things we need to know about that affects our digital design process and understand what they mean, right? So what exactly does these main terminologies mean, right? And all we're going to do is just think of some analogies, like for example storage. Think of storage. By the way, everybody has pretty much been on campus already, right? You've been in first year studio already?
Yes, sir.
Right. And you know that there's a library that's upstairs, right? In the staff room. So if you need a book, you can always go to the library, right?
Yes, sir.
But of course, you have to climb a flight of stairs to get there, so it's not exactly close, right? And that's exactly what storage is. It's like this big archive of data that's usually not very close, and you got to travel in order to access it, right? So, you can kind of think of the library upstairs as storage, and you having to go to the library for a book, then carry it back downstairs, open it up on your desk is the procedure that the computer has to do every time you need to open Photoshop or, I don't know, Netflix or a video game. That's essentially what it has to do every time. And what it kind of looks like that. If you were to put a physical description to how it looks, it would kind of look something like that, right? So next, we want to talk about the graphics processing unit. And my best analogy for the GPU is think about somebody that knows how to draw, right? Like, you guys coming up through high school, you probably was the person that could draw, and if somebody needs something to draw, they would say, boy, Kimona, draw this thing for me now, cause me know say you know for draw already, right? And a person that can draw would be there struggling, trying to draw something, and Kimona would just come and just instantly, bam, because she know how to draw already. So the GPU is kind of like that. It is a processing unit. It is a component in the computer that is primarily focused on graphics, right? Anything that have to do with graphics, the GPU got it, all right? And if you put a visual description to that, it kind of looks something like that, like a spaceship looking thing right there. And the other thing is the CPU, and I like to refer to the CPU as, think about that brethren that you probably have in high school or sixth form that can do maths really well, but him can't draw for saving life, he or she, right? Unfortunately, that's the way a lot of things are set up. It's kind of left brain, right brain. Yeah, you have people that can draw really well, but when it comes to calculation, it's like a no-no, and vice versa. So your central processing unit, CPU, is very good at calculation, but very bad at when it comes to graphics, right? So these two guys need to work together ultimately so that you can have a very fast computer that can do graphics really well, right? And the CPU is basically just a little chip that kind of looks like that. Now your RAM, that's the very interesting one. Think about that analogy. When you run up to the lab upstairs, not to the lab, to the library upstairs to get a book, then you need to come back downstairs to open the book and start doing your work. I mean, think about it. I mean, I think the library only allows you to borrow like 3 books at a time. So I mean, if you needed to get through some work and you needed to access 10 books, then that's a lot of exercise you're getting for running upstairs and running downstairs. But at the same time, if you could borrow 10 or 15 books from the library, how would it all fit on your desk? I mean, yeah, you have all the books, but then, it's going to be hard for you to open all of them at the same time. So you don't have enough of a work area in which to open all 10, 15 books. And that is exactly what RAM is. It's the area that you have to work in, right? The more RAM you have, the more books you can open, the more Chrome tabs you can open, the more Netflix videos you can run with YouTube and all of these things, right? And your RAM kind of looks like these little chips like that. And then last is your motherboard, and think of motherboard as like, I don't know, all of CSA. It houses everything. So you running up to the library and coming back and all that takes place in the school building. So that's essentially what it is. It's just ironic how when you consider how this works, it's very similar to how we operate in any regular office, right? So the idea is that most of the fetching that you will have to do is done by your CPU, right? So if you need to get a book, the accountant is the one that's going to run and get it, right? Not the artist. The artist is going to be chilling, and only when it's time to tackle something, only when it's time to draw something, is when the artist or the GPU is going to be used, right? So that's really how they act. So, you know, he is the calculation guy, he's the maths guy, and he's the artist. Now you can even consider things like, you know, how experienced is this artist? You could have an artist that has a bachelor's in art, or you could have your cousin that really can only draw stickman and lines, right? I mean, you know, obviously a graphics processor unit that has more power to it is going to do a lot more than a small one that really can't do much, right? And the first point that you guys need to like jot down, if it's, there are going to be some key things that you guys need to remember in order to do the activity, the first activity, right? Which of course will be graded, and is to remember what are the key points of what we're talking about here. In architecture, your GPU is perhaps one of the most important components of your computer. Naturally, the GPU deals with graphics, and you guys deal with graphics. I mean, the course is called digital media, so you're dealing with graphics. So hence, the graphics processor unit is going to become a very important part of your computer, right? And that is the GPU. Sometimes we call that the graphics card. So one of the first things to remember when you go on Amazon or Newegg, or you beg your parents to buy you a computer, or you walk into Royal Computers and you see all these things, you're going to see something that says, okay, this computer either has a discrete GPU or an integrated GPU. Anybody ever came across these terminologies before when buying a computer or just hanging around a computer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. So some of us are familiar with it and some of us are not. The bottom line, discrete GPU good, integrated GPU bad, right? If it's one thing that you remember that. Discrete simply means that the GPU and the CPU, you know, think about when you're sharing dorm space with somebody. Both of you have to share everything, the bathroom, the kitchen, everything, versus when you have your own space. So the discrete GPU has its own space to do everything. You understand? It has its own work area and it's independent. The same thing for the GPU. It has its own work area and it's also independent, versus having the two of them having to share resources, right? So integrated mean that it needs to share resources, which is what these two fellows are doing here, which is bad. Edwards, do you have a question?
Aren't there some like good integrated ones?
Yeah, just like how there are dorms that are really fancy, so it's not that bad, you can share it, but ultimately you'd want to avoid an integrated GPU. Granted, everything comes down to money, but I am going to recommend minimum for CSA, right? Because remember, you have 3 years of computing to do, and then you're going to go out into the industry after that. So you don't want to buy something that's just good enough for exercise 1 and 2 of DDM, and then when it comes to next year, you can't manage. So at minimum, architecture students, you need a discrete GPU, right? Not an integrated GPU. Okay? If somebody come to you and say, I have a used laptop, you need to find that out first, right? And this is an idea of what the GPU looks like. And the thing to note about a GPU it always looks really cool, right? And you guys can tell from the graphics here, right? It looks like something out of Transformers, something like a spaceship. Kind of looks cool, right? And the reason for that is that graphics cards are usually aimed at the video game industry, because video games is graphics. So remember, graphics card deal with anything that has to do with graphics. And one of the biggest industries, even bigger than the movie industry, is the video game industry. Maybe even bigger than the architecture industry or the building industry. Well, maybe not as big, but you get the idea. So they're going to tailor the look and feel of anything that has to do with GPU to feel very edgy and cool. Now, you don't really need to worry about how they look. What you need to know about is there are only 2 brands that exist on planet Earth, right? Which is a little ironic, right? I mean, think about how much car brands there are. Think about how much brands of everything there are that exist in the world. But there are only 2 brands that in the world that makes video card. A third one just kind of popped up over the summer, but trust me, them have enough to catch up on. So really, it's really the competition is only between these 2, right? And they are NVIDIA GeForce and AMD Radeon, right? These are the 2 main guys. Now, when you go and you buy a graphics card, when you buy a laptop, you're going on Amazon and you're shopping for a laptop because you need it for school. One would say that, no, worry about it, man. Just buy something that can play a game and you're good to go. I mean, if you want to operate like that, and the video card would cost like, the computer would cost like, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000. That's a lot of money to gamble and just saying, just because them say buy it for video games, it should be fine. What I want you guys to know at minimum is, how do I know, right? When you go out and you buy a laptop and you see these fancy stickers on the laptop, and the laptop sticker says GeForce GT 420M, what does that really mean, right? Especially when you're going to the used market and you might be looking that you're getting a deal. And this is one of the things that I want us to know about. And these 2 companies that exist have their own ways of determining which video card is stronger than the other. So the first thing to know is that the first 3 digits deals with the, what do you call it now? It deals with the technology, right? It's kind of like saying that the first type of cars use diesel gas. So those cars are called the GT. But then next type of cars use electricity. So those are called the GTX. You get what I'm saying? So they put a name to designate when there is a major shift with the core technology that drives the video card. So for example, nowadays when you buy a laptop, you're not going to see GT or GTX anymore. You're going to see RTX, right? And some of you might be familiar with this. And that's because there has been like a major shift in how video technology has done. So and usually to represent that, NVIDIA will like change these 4 digits. So these 3 digits are these 2 digits. So probably in the future when there's some new technology, it will be called like, BTX or whatever, who knows. This does not tell you how powerful the graphics card is, right? Now the next set of numbers, which is here, is the generation. And the generation is simply saying, do I drive a 2022 Corolla or do I drive a 2008 Corolla? It doesn't mean that the 2022 Corolla is necessarily faster than the 2008. It just means that one is newer. It might be more efficient. It might have, automatic windows, where the old one you have to wind up the window. You know what I mean? It doesn't tell you how fast the vehicles are and the size of engine they have. What does tell you that is these sets of digits here, right? And when you guys are buying a laptop, you want to watch these 2 digits. Very important, right? Because this is where you would get tricked and you spend a lot of money in cases when you don't need to, or you buy something that might seem new and it's not. So for example, 60 is higher than 10, right? 80 is higher than 70. So these sets of digits tells you the power. If it was a car, it would be like the horsepower, right? And the last digits here tells you, like, I call it a variant. So for example, if you buy a laptop and the laptop says TI at the end, right? Like this laptop here, suppose it said 420 Ti. Ti is like the premium, the most premium. Nothing else exists in that line that is faster. That's Nvidia's way of saying it, right? Which is really just another way to kind of take more money out of your pocket, because it might be like 1% faster. It might not be worth the extra 500 US you went paid just because it says TI, right? In other cases, you might see words like M, and M simply means that it is for mobile technology. So it's laptops, right? So you might be saying, well, obvious. I mean, if I buy a laptop and I see a sticker on it like this and it says 420, I would expect it to say M because it's on a laptop. But that's not exactly true, because you can buy an all-in-one computer that says 420M. It's not a laptop, it's a computer. But what does that mean? That means that it has a mobile rated video card in that computer. And any video card that is mobile will never be as powerful as the same card that is not mobile. So what do I mean? If you go to get a laptop and it says that it has a GTX 860M, and you go to buy another one and it says it have a GTX 860 without the M, then the one without the M will be more powerful, right? Because the one with the M is optimized for battery life, and those laptops when you put on your lap in about 15 minutes is like your lap is on fire. So the M variant is made to help minimize things like that. But it's not going to, the trade-off is that it's not going to be as powerful as a non-M. So that's been a mouthful so far. So I have a question that I want to throw out to Justin. Are you there, Justin?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
So if I went to buy a laptop for CSA and the laptop say, one of them said GTX 1070 and one of them said GTX 980 Ti, which one will have the better graphics card for me to do Lumion and Twinmotion and Photoshop and all these things? Which one will have the faster graphics card?
I want to say the 980 because the 8 is higher than the 7.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Let's get the opinion of Christina. What do you think? You got to buy a laptop and these cost money, you're talking like, I don't know, 1,500 US thereabout. So yeah, you're spending a lot of money. Which, and you buying it for CSC and you see these two guys here, which one would have the faster video card?
Oh my. The TI you were saying is not really that different. I think that's what you were saying about the TI.
Maybe not. Who knows?
I don't know. I think I would go with the TI, I guess.
You go with the TI. All right, no problem. Your answer is locked in. It's locked in. So
Okay.
let's take one more person. Watson, are you there? Shaniel?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Which laptop would you buy?
I would say the 980 as well.
The 980. All right. And why would you buy the 980?
Because it has a higher performance than the rest of it.
And how you know that it has a higher performance?
Because of the third and the fourth column.
Exactamundo. So those of you who said the 980 is correct. However, not because it says TI, right? Remember, that's what they're going to use to catch you so you spend more money. I mean, for people that are NVIDIA fans, they would say, yeah, but the TI is more powerful. You know. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that 80 is higher than 70, right? But then this says 10 and this says 9. So, yeah, you had a question?
So that's what I was going to ask.
Right.
Like it would be the same as 8 in a different generation.
Right. So what that would mean is that, for example, if Shamar bought the 980 and Shaniel buy the 1070, I mean, Shaniel's battery life would last longer because the 1070 is newer technology, so it's more efficient. You know, think about a newer car. It burns fuel better than an old car, even if you have a fast old car, right? So, you know, that's a very rough way of thinking about it. But, you know, when you have money in hand and money at play, I mean, you know, you see a 1070 and it costs 2,000 US, and you see a 980 and it costs 1,000 US. I mean, is $150,000 more really worth it? Right? So that's why you have to know what these numbers mean that sit on the top of the laptop when you go to buy one, and because a lot of them will beef up the fact that, oh, it's 10th generation. So for example, if you went and see a wicked laptop that looks pretty with neon lights and the whole works, and it has a I don't know, 2210, right? That doesn't exist, but I'm just saying, right? Suppose it did, right? You're buying a GTX 2210, right? Or you could buy a 980 Ti. The 2210 would barely even run Photoshop. And the reason for that is that even though the generation is so old, the power is going to be so weak. Like the engine, think about a car with a big engine versus a small engine, right? So at the same time, you don't want to buy a car that is too old. You know, it can't even, I mean, this is generation 2. So this is probably very old, right? Right now we are in RTX generation 4. Generation 4 coming out like next month, right? So in every line, so for example, GTX done. Those days are gone now. The last GTX was a 1090, right? So after GTX, we have RTX, and RTX start a whole new line, right? So some people are still buying a GTX 1070. Think about when COVID hit and we couldn't get no computer to buy, right? You have a lot of people out there that went back and bought some GTX 1070 or GTX 980 laptops, and it's perfectly fine. So keep an eye on that. Now, just before we move on to the next topic, I would definitely have to touch a little bit on the other brand that exists, which is the Radeon. And Radeon kind of does their thing a little different, right? And one hand it's simple, and on the other hand, they're just kind of complicated. So, on the simple point of view, Radeon goes by these first two digits. And these first two digits simply tells you the tier. So R5 is lower than R9. So the R5 is going to be better. Sorry, the R9 is going to be better, right? These two digits, it's not telling you the generation or the power. It's just like it's saying that you're buying a Lamborghini. No matter what type of Lamborghini, it's in the class of a Lamborghini, right? It's kind of like that. And pretty much they're saying, you know, you can ignore all of that and just buy a video card based on this. So RX is 10, so after 9 there is 10, so and so forth, right? You know, I need to update this slide because I need to see what comes after 10. But anyway, the point is that
So you're saying that you could just forget all about all of those stuff? So why the put it there then?
that's what I'm coming to now, right? Because think about it. If you're telling your mom, boy, I really need a computer for CSA, you know, boy, and it going to cost 150,000, you know, right? And, you know, your mom walks into a store and see they have a sale. You know, grab up one now before it gone. You know, she just want to see R9 or R5 and she just grab the R9, right? Because the 9 is higher. So in one end, that's kind of what they do. Now, these digits down here are kind of similar to how NVIDIA does their thing, right? The first one, which is here, tells you the generation. So 4th generation, 3rd generation, 2nd, and so forth. And each of these kind of does the same thing, like how the NVIDIA does their thing. But NVIDIA doesn't put a number in their series. They just, you know, ABC, GTX, RTX, you know, they just kind of throw it out there. Whereas ATI, come on, slides, move. Right, so ATI puts a number there so that even though the generation is newer, it has its own tier, right? And in addition to that, now they have a generation here. So you could have a R9 720, right? Or you could have a R5 980, right? The fact is that 9 is higher than 5, so you wouldn't even look on the 5. You understand? So that's how they kind of do their thing. They class everything under these main digits here, and the number simply means that it's better, right? And these digits do the same thing. So first one is the generation, the last two is the power. But the power is a little irrelevant with Radeon because, you know, if you're looking at 480 and it's a R5 480, then, you know, it's like it's a R5. So, you know, no matter how powerful this is, it's under R5. So it will never be as strong as a R9. So that is how AMD does their thing. And when you go on Amazon and all that, you will see it says, like, usually on the front of the laptop, on the front of the laptop, come on, zoom out, right? You will see on NVIDIA, they will say GT 420M and blah, blah, blah. But with a Radeon laptop, you'll only see like R7, R9, RX. You have to go in and investigate which one of the R9 there is, because you could have a R9 420, right? Now the last digit still where is it? Right, the last digit tells you how powerful that R5 is. All right, so That's why I said that, AMD, it's easier, but yet it's more confusing. So, just pay attention to these 4 numbers, right? Well, as a matter of fact, pay attention to all the numbers, right? Because you're learning it here, right? So I don't expect you to go out and buy something. You can't bother look up what these are. As it relates to the M and the X, it's kind of the same thing. M means mobile, they put it at the front. For them, X mean extreme. So, it's like, extreme. Kind of like the TI with NVIDIA. TI means extreme. Well, in AMD world, X means extreme. So you would have a R9 390X or a R9 390. Just know that the R9 390X laptop, if you put it on your lap, you can basically fry a pancake on it because it says X, so it's going to be extreme heat, extreme noise, extreme everything. All right. So that is it for laptops, right? And next we want to go to the CPU. So I want to talk a little bit about the CPU. And when you go to buy a laptop, you might notice that your CPU will vary, and that will greatly vary the price, right? So for example, you might see something that says a i5 or i7, all right? You guys should be familiar with this, or a Ryzen 5 or a Ryzen 9. These are what you see on laptops out there. The interesting thing is that for you guys, it's not about knowing what the numbers say for processors. Yes, it is important, but it's more important with video cards. For system units, there are 2 things that is the primary concern for you guys. The first thing is how much cores, right? Let's look at this picture, for example, right? These 2 persons painting this wall. So I don't know. Tanya, you there, Tanya? If 2 persons are painting this wall, technically they can get the job done in half the time. Would you agree, Tanya? Is Tanya there? Is Tanya alive? Cooper? Yes,
It's
you are
Taina.
here. It's Taina?
Yes.
Ah, thank you. Don't worry, we're going to meet each other a little bit more digitally in a bit. But would you agree that if 2 persons paint this wall, it technically should be done in half the time?
Yes, sir.
Exactly. So one would think that the more cores that a computer has, when you go to buy a laptop and it says, it's 8 core, it's 4 core, it's 20 core, it's 24 core. More cores does mean that it's going to cut your work in half, which means it's going to be twice as fast or 4 times as fast. But, Taina, what if you had an assignment to do? Let's say it's a history assignment, and that history assignment required you to read a chapter. If you ask your friend to help you read the chapter, would that cut the work in half?
No, sir.
Exactly, because you're going to have to read the chapter anyway. So what does this tell us? This tells us that just because a computer or a laptop has a bunch of cores, it's not always true that it will cut the work in half, right? As a matter of fact, with the computer, 95% of what the computer does only usually uses one processor. Anyway, one core, one thread, and we're going to come to those terms in a little bit. So it wouldn't be wise for you to break the bank to buy a computer that says, oh, it has 10 cores versus this one that has 4. So I should take the 10 core because the 10 core will cut my work, by 1/10. Not necessarily, only if the work that you're doing will benefit. And that's why number of cores is important to know. And the other thing that's important to know is the speed. How fast will these persons paint this wall, right? How fast will one person read this book? In the case of painting the wall, well, it's two persons. So if these two persons are moving at a speed of 10, then essentially you're getting a speed of 20 because two persons are doing the work. But if you're reading a book and these two persons are moving at a speed of 10, then you're really just getting a speed of 10. Because, one person will just be sitting idly by, because even if they read the book, you're still going to have to share that information with the other person. So it does work out to be the same thing as if one person did just read the whole book to begin with. So in the case where only one person is working, the speed becomes super important, right? And that is the second thing that you want to watch with processor speed. So for most of us, we know about Control-Alt-Delete. This is what we usually press when the computer freezing, and we can use that to bring up the task manager. And the task manager is really saying that, hey, when you look at your CPU, it's really telling you that each of these boxes here represent a person that is painting. The more boxes you have, the quicker you can paint this wall. But if you're reading a book, it doesn't matter if you have 50 boxes. What really matters is the speed of one individual box. And how do you know the speed? Well, it's right here. So each of these boxes, if I could just get this mouse to set right, each of these boxes has a speed of 3.4 gigahertz, right? And if you look at the name of this processor, it's a i5 7500 3.4 gigahertz processor. So essentially that is saying that this is moving at 3.4 gigahertz, this is moving at 3.4, this is moving at 3.4, and this is moving at 3.4, right? No, you cannot add them together and say, whoa, my computer is like 12 point something gigahertz. No, because that would only be true if all of you were painting the wall. And in most cases, most applications is only going to use one. So that's why this number becomes super important right here, right? And that is the speed. So for computers that we're going to be using in CSA, your minimum speed that you want to have is 2 gigahertz, right? So that's the other important thing to write down. 2 gigahertz. You don't want to go lower than that. Higher is better. Lower than 2, boy, don't even bother. Don't even bother, right? Now, I mean, there is some politics to discuss here, and I don't want to go into the politics of this because you might look on. You might come on thing. Right. You might look here and you say, oh, this is moving at 3.4 gigahertz. And when I buy it, it says I'm buying at 3.4 gigahertz. But yet still, the speed that my computer is moving at is 2.4, you know. How comes I'm seeing that? You know, are they robbing me of gigahertz? Why is it moving slower than what it's rated to move at? And that goes into a lot of other marketing gimmicks that the CPU manufacturers will use. So I'm not going to go into that necessarily, but I'm just going to say that what you see here as the base clock, we're going to use that as the official speed, right?
So you can teach us how to overclock?
Definitely not, right? But we can talk about it in a more, maybe in a one-on-one session throughout the course, right?
All right.
All right, cool. Right. So far we've learned about the CPU, right? And we know that each of these are different cores, right? And well, there's one little politics that I need to cover that I can't avoid, right? If you look here, you will see that, well, this has 4 cores and 4 logical cores. This is important because this is what gets us confused when we go and shop for a computer. And different marketing companies will use different terms, right? So I'm going to tell you, officially, you have things that's called cores and things that are called threads. Threads are also called logical cores. You know, don't ask. That's just the rule, right? I don't make the rule, right? So you might find a laptop that says it is a quad core, which means it has 4 cores. But even though a laptop or desktop might have 4 cores, it might have more than 4 threads, right? And I know they kind of do this just to kind of confuse us, but you know. So when you go to purchase a computer, yes, you're going to look at the cores, but you also need to look at the threads. As a matter of fact, don't even look at the cores, just look at the threads, right? That's the important thing to watch when you're dealing with processors, right? So processor speed, no less than 2 gigahertz. Processor threads, no less than 4 threads. You know what? Nowadays I need to raise the bar, you know. So you know what? No less than 6 threads, right? So this have 4. So yeah, you don't want to buy this computer, all right? Now, so remember, don't watch cores, watch threads. And this is just to make your life easier when getting a computer. So there we have it. We've spoken about CPU cores. We've spoken about the CPU. We spoke about the RAM. We know that the RAM is your desk space, the space that you have to work with. We spoke about the storage. The storage is like the CSA lab. Every minute you need to open a program, you need to run up to the CSA library. You need to run up to the library for a book and come back down. That is exactly what's happening with storage. And we talk about the GPU, which is like the person that is responsible for all things graphics. And we learn how to know whether it's a powerful graphics card or not so powerful graphics card, right? So what I want to tell you about now is at least that you know the type of processors there, right? Now remember I gave you that story of the core and the threads, you know, and I tell you not to watch the cores, always watch the threads. And this is one of the reasons why, right? So you go to buy a laptop and you say, okay, I see an i5 here. And this i5 that I see here says that, oops. It says that it says that it has 4 cores and 4 threads, right? Which is the same as logical processors, right? I keep telling you threads because when you go on Amazon, you're not going to see logical processors. You're going to see threads. Just know that they are the same thing. However, you see another i5 there, and this very same i5 might have 4 cores, but 8 threads, right? So you want to get the one with more threads, okay? So just watch the threads. Don't watch the cores, right? Don't pay the cores any mind. Now, essentially, the more cores you have is the more accountants you have, right? Remember, accountants deal with calculation. Them can't draw, but them can crunch numbers, right? They're the ones that run up and down and run your Netflix and run your Chrome tabs and do all of that stuff. The artist is the one, the GPU, that's the one that deals with your graphics, your Photoshop, your Lumion, your video games, your movie that you're watching, right? So the more cores that you have, we already learned that more cores don't mean that it's getting double, triple, quadruple fast. It just means that you're able to do more things at once for the things that you can do at once. So if you're painting a wall, 2 you can do it. If you're reading a book, only 1 you can do it. If you're using Photoshop, it only uses 1 processor. If you're rendering with V-Ray, it can use 2 processors or 10 processors if you have 10. All right. Now the way there are only two. Okay, let me kind of go up there. Let me go higher. Now notice that we're going higher. Start from i5 and now there is i7. And this kind of goes into the whole branding behind getting your processors, right? There are only two processing companies that exist in the world, right? Just like how there are only two video card companies that exist. Which is why when they had the chip shortage, they had in some states they had to stop making cars because the guys couldn't make enough processors to begin with, right? So come on. Okay, all right. Let me just kind of skip ahead. Right. So there only exists Intel and AMD. These are the only two guys that makes processors. Well, kinda. Mac has started to make their own processors, but Mac processors only work with Mac stuff, so that doesn't count. ARM also makes processors, but those processors are only for phones and tablets. Everything else in the world, planes, cars, game consoles, computers, laptops, everything uses the processors from these main guys here, right? And only two exist. Cool. Each of them, just like the video card, have their own naming conventions, right? So for example, Intel will have a kind of similar thing to the video card. Now guess what? I'm not going to go through this with you guys because for the purpose of architecture and what we do, you don't really need to watch these numbers as such, right? For those of you that are die-hard tech people, yeah, you're going to want to watch the numbers and whatever. But for the most part, the only thing you need to know, how many threads does it have? What speed is it? After you get those information, then you can start looking into things like, okay, this is a 10th generation 65 G7 processor. All this stuff doesn't really affect you directly, especially as it has to do with graphics, and especially if you're on a budget, right? The latest generation, just like how you have the latest car, will always cost more money. Cool? But it doesn't mean that that car is faster. So we're not going to play the game of, okay, I have a 2022 Corolla and you only have a 1990 Corolla. No. All we care about is how many cores does it have? What speed is it? I mean, it kind of does matter that this Corolla has, I don't know, airbags and this one doesn't, because if you crash, you're going dead in the old Corolla, likely. Whereas the new, so there are these gimmicks which is good.
But it's stronger.
Well, and there is that as well. But at least for processors, you're not throwing them around, so the strength of it don't matter. But the newer the car, the more features it will have and the more efficient it will be at the end of the day. However, from experience with being through CSA and with running multiple digital design media courses, when it comes to you guys buying a laptop, I mean, it's all about the money. So, just buying a laptop because the newer one will make me use, I don't know, will give me a feature that is cool. At the end of the day, when you look at the bang for the buck, you might find that an older, faster processor is better, or slightly older. So you want to watch number of threads, speed, and then you can look at, okay, what year is it? How old is it? What's the latest generation? The latest generation is 14. This is generation 10. That shouldn't change your mind in buying a processor that is way better because it's faster, because that's what matters. You don't want to buy the latest, slowest car. Bad idea. All right? So that's pretty much it with processors. So, just so you know, there are different tiers of processors. So for example, in the Intel, you have the i5, you have the i7, you have the i9, and then you have the Xeon. The Xeons are special processors that are, well, let's put it this way. The Xeons can have a whole bunch of cores. So for example, you will have a single Xeon chip that has 32 cores and 64 threads. That's just mind-blowing. And you can combine two of them together for a whopping 120 threads. That's just hard to comprehend. But then you open Photoshop and Photoshop is only using one. So, why would you spend thousands of dollars and Photoshop is just going to use one? But if you're rendering with V-Ray, then woo! You're gonna lead big time. So, but for the most part, you guys will be shopping in the tier between, to kind of skip ahead now, you'll be shopping in the tier between i5 and i9. Okay, this is the point where you get your notebook out again. Nothing lower than i5. All right, if somebody giving you an i3 computer, don't take it. Give it to your little sister, your little brother or something. Not going to work. All right, i5 and higher. So when you're buying processor and you're looking in Intel, first thing you want to confirm, it's an i5 or higher. Next thing you want to confirm, how much threads does it have? The next thing, what speed is it? And then you can consider, okay, what generation is it? And you go from there. So let's talk about the red team now. AMD, or it's the green team, but it's like the red team nowadays. AMD is kind of like the underdog. They were the underdog. If you guys are following the tech space, you would have maybe heard the news that's been happening over the last 3 years, how AMD does totally name Intel food, so to speak. So the underdog has come and just kind of taken over, and they just give you way more for your money. You look at an Intel laptop, you look at an AMD one, and you just have to say to yourself, why would I buy Intel? So Intel has kind of been like the standard for years. You have a big company, you're buying an Intel processor. AMD, okay, the college student will take the AMD because it's efficient, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. They kind of earned that reputation in the early years because Intel was the big dog, and then AMD came, and AMD was just nowhere near the development of Intel, and over the years they just kind of get the underdog title, but not anymore, right? Because nowadays,
Intel are good for their money.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, if I should bring up my task manager now, my computer that I'm using is actually a AMD Threadripper, right? And it has, okay, who has been listening here? How many cores does it have? Anybody?
12.
And how many threads does it have?
12 cores and 24 threads.
Exactly. So that would mean that those guys painting the wall, it would be 24 of them painting the wall. But when I'm running Photoshop, I'm only using one. Oh, I can't draw on this thing because it's Task Manager. But anyway, I'm only using one when I'm in Photoshop. So when I'm in Photoshop, what really matters is my speed, because even though I have all this power, I'm only going to use one. So the speed is at 3.5 gigahertz, right? And, we can have that conversation about overclocking another time, right? All right. But that is essentially the speed. All right. Okay. So as it relates to AMD now, AMD starts from Ryzen 3 and they go all the way up to Ryzen 9. You don't want to get anything that says Ryzen 3. All right. If somebody gives you a laptop with Ryzen 3, tell them that you don't want it. All right. Because it just going to bring you stress. 5 and higher is for you. So just like with Intel, confirm that it is a Ryzen 5 or higher. Next thing, how many threads does it have? Next thing, what is the speed of those threads? All right. Nothing lower than 2 gigahertz. All right. And then you can start looking at the generation, say, oh, this is a generation 3. I think now they're up to generation 5. All right. All right. Now, anybody has their desk looking like this currently at their house?
Why are you trying to expose us all?
One would say, how do you work? I mean, but seriously, if your desk look like this, how would you get stuff done? Give me a strategy that you would use.
Sir, you push off some book, the way you do, and then put them back.
Put them on the floor, and put them back.
Well, ironically, this is exactly what the computer does, right? The computer, when it's overwhelmed, it pushes stuff off on the floor until you're ready to use it, and that is called virtual RAM. So for example, if you run up to the CSA library and you borrow 15 books, you come back down to studio and your desk can only hold 5 books, then chances are you're going to have to put those, well, I don't say put the library books on the ground, but you're going to have to put it somewhere else. Probably not in the library because it's so far. So you're going to put it in your locker or on another desk or something. And then when you're ready to use a book that is not on your desk, you're going to swap. And swapping is a term that is used in memory in the computer. Swapping occurs when you run out of memory and the computer doesn't put back the data back on the shelf. Instead, it puts it, on the floor or somewhere around that is closer than the shelf, but it's not as efficient as if you could open everything on your desk. And what you notice when this happens is when your computer starts to move slow. Like, for example, if you have, is there anybody here guilty of having 100 Chrome tabs open? Nobody? Come on, I know that you are, right? Many of us have like, say again?
It's never that bad.
It's never that bad? Okay.
I have like 6 tabs that are in.
Speak for yourself. I have about 10.
Oh.
And on top of that 10, you have Netflix going, you're listening to music in the background, and you're running Photoshop. So what the computer has to do in order for them to get space to work is that it has to put the stuff temporarily to the side. And what this means, every time you switch between Chrome and Photoshop, Photoshop takes a while to open. It don't take as long as when you open it for the first time, but it's not as snippy as if you just had Photoshop running. And that is what's called virtual RAM. And virtual RAM is what happens when you start to run out of space. And if you continue to run out of even more space, you might get the notorious blue screen of death. And by now, hopefully most of us have had this experience, right? And we don't want to ever have it, which is when your computer does blue screens, right? So that's essentially what memory swapping is. And I put this picture of this turtle because when your computer has to do memory swapping, oh gosh, it gets really slow, right? So the solution to that is just not to have 50 Chrome tabs open, but you know how that goes already, right?
Yeah, but Chrome is not a good browser to use, so they have low specs.
All right, we can have that debate further down in the module. Wow, you notice, if you take a look now, I mean, when I first came on, it was like daytime, and like behind me, it's like night now, right? So this is going to be the night shift class, it seems, right? I need to make sure I like my mosquito destroyer and everything when I come into this class, right? Anyway, back to this interesting slide, and I have 3 animals here, and I have the turtle, which is obviously slow. Then I have the hare, which is obviously fast, And then I have the craziest thing, a rabbit with a jetpack, right? So, this is just to accentuate that if you compare the three different types of storage that exist, one is really slow, one is very fast compared to that, and one just blows it out of the water, right? And what happens is that a lot of us, we might buy a really fast laptop with a really good graphics card, but the storage has a turtle inside. And then we try to use Photoshop and we say, oh my gosh, this computer is so slow, it takes forever to boot up. And all we really needed was to change this hard drive to this one. So I don't know if you ever heard of SSD, which is solid state hard drive. Traditionally, before this existed, we always had mechanical drives, which is HDD. Most laptops that sell would have a HDD in them. Nowadays, most kind of have a SSD. But if you really want to be cooking with gas, you want to get and this is a mouthful, PCIe SSD, right? This is the rabbit with the rocket launcher because it is way faster than this. But this is even way faster than this. So if you think about this, I think the numbers are, this is 5 times faster than this. And this is about 3 times faster than that. So obviously this is like not even compare, right? But 5 times faster is enough to make it look like you've got a new computer, right? So just simply changing your storage will make the world of a difference. Think of it this way. If you have a 10-story building, if CSA was a 10-story building and the library was on the top floor, those of you who take the stairs are those who have this thing right here. Those of you who take the elevator are those of you who have this here. And those of you who have a jetpack will take this one here, which is faster than the elevator. So that's just a good analogy of just how these speed compare. And of course, this is going to cost about 2 times more than that. But guess what? This and this cost the same price. That's just crazy, right? But what's the catch? There must be a catch, right? And yes, there is. Not all laptops will support that, right?
Sir, isn't the capacity on an SSD greater than the other one?
I'm glad that you bring that up, because whereas the tortoise is really slow, you get way more space for the same price. As it relates to these two, they're pretty much the same. So for example, if you have a really slow laptop and you realize that, oh, it's slow because it has a HDD, and I learned in DDM class that HDD is like a turtle, it's really slow, and you had I don't know, 100 gigs, right? That 100 gigs would cost about $30 to buy. No, not even 30. That's maybe a bad example. Let's use a more realistic example, right? 1 gig or 1 terabyte, right? Right. A 1 terabyte hard drive will run you maybe about, nowadays, maybe about $50 US.
$60 depending on the brand.
All right, well, $50, right? But a 1 terabyte SSD would cost you about under $100. It's getting closer as time go by. So the other thing to consider is that you can buy a 14 terabyte HDD hard drive, but the largest hard drive that you can get in SSD is 2 terabytes. You can get more, but it's not really practical to get those. It costs too much. So when you have a laptop, you want to have a SSD in there. This guy is for storage. This is like your shelf. You know, you put data on it and you put it to sit down. For your laptop that you're using to do work every day on the go, you're going to want one of these two guys in there. And believe it or not, the newest laptop you can buy nowadays, people are still selling them with turtles in there. And the reason for doing that is they want to get it sold for really cheap. So they bundle it with a turtle and then you say, whoa, this laptop is really cheap and it has a good video card. And you realize that, oh, it has a HDD in there. All right. So that is a very important note. Yeah. Question?
It's giving the same vibe as people who sell iPhones, like the iPhone 11 or 12 with 64 gigabyte storage.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. All right. Speaking of that, maybe we have some Apple fans in the house, right? I'm going to turn on this other light here so that the bulb doesn't tap me. Turn down this light here so that it's not like blinded. Yeah, that's much better now. Okay, cool. Alrighty, so that is important news about storage. So I hope you guys wrote that down. So in summary, what did we learn today? We learned that storage is pretty much where all your data is stored. It's kind of like the library upstairs CSA. You have to run upstairs to get the stuff and back. Getting an SSD is like taking the elevator instead of running up the stairs. And getting a PCIe SSD is like flying with a rocket pack, right? We also learned that the GPU is kind of like the artist, you know? It handles everything to do with graphics. RAM is like your desk space that you have to work with. The bigger desk you have, the more things you can do at once. And your CPU is pretty much like the accountant. Him can do maths, but him can't do art, right? You don't want to ever not have a discrete GPU or dedicated GPU. That's another term that they might use, dedicated GPU. You want to avoid integrated GPU, right? And we want to avoid, these are things that we want to avoid like the plague. Anything that says Celeron, don't even consider it. Anything that says i3, don't even consider it. Pentium, no. Athlon, no. Oh, I need to add another one to this. What is it? Ryzen 3, right? No. All right, so you want to avoid these like the coronavirus.
Sir, mo Pentium na that bad, sir.
No. Don't be tempted. Don't. You see, it already starts. All right, so
Bad, sir.
here is an interesting chart that you might find. When you run Photoshop, what does Photoshop depend on the most? Well, you could have the most RAM in the world, right? Oh, by the way, we didn't speak of RAM. For RAM, you don't want to have nothing less than 16 gig of RAM. Maybe you will scrape through with 8 gig for a while, for a very short while, but 16 is it. It doesn't matter if you have the highest amount of RAM, it will not let your Photoshop go faster. It doesn't matter if you have the most expensive video card, it will not affect your speed when using Photoshop. It doesn't matter if you have 24 threads like what I have. Photoshop doesn't care. What does Photoshop care about? What speed is your storage? What speed is your processor? So for example, if your Photoshop is moving really slow, don't run out and buy more memory. It's highly likely it's not what is causing it to work. But wait, there is more, because obviously we don't only use Photoshop. So for example, if we use Lumion, anybody here knows about the Lumion application? No, anybody heard of Lumion?
Yes, sir.
Heard of it, but not really.
Right. Well, Lumion is going to be one of your best friends when it comes to 3D rendering for CSA, right? Twinmotion is another program like Lumion. So when running Twinmotion, it doesn't matter if you have the fastest hard drive ever or the largest hard drive ever. Not going to help you. What matters? The GPU. It's totally dependent on the GPU. RAM, not so much. And speed of the processor, yeah. Number of cores, not really. What about Rivet? You guys know about the Rivet application, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Right. I mean, Rivet is kind of like a nice in between, but obviously, having a faster processor will let your Rivet move way quicker. So don't finish your budget on having the most powerful graphics card. It's not going to make Rivet run faster. Your speed is what determines that, and the amount of memory, right? So I just point this out to tell you that different applications require different or utilize particular components of your computer. And if money isn't an object, then sure, you can just buy the highest, most expensive 5,000 US dollars laptop. But in most cases, many of us are on a budget. So we have to very carefully navigate ourselves with choosing the right thing depending on what we're doing and balancing that off with the price. All right. We're going to discuss that another time, but where I want to end with is, and we're going to leave this conversation for another day. We don't want to start any wars at the end, near to the end of class, right? This kind of leads us into our activity, one of our first activities, and I want you guys to find me a laptop on any website. Could be Newegg, could be Walmart, it could be even Royal, right? Well, Royal website not really up to date, but you know, but not exceed spending 1,000 US dollars on a laptop that is ideal for CSA. Based on everything that we learned here about video card and system unit, CPU and GPU and all these things, see if you can find me a good computer that costs $1,000 or less. All right?
Sir,
Yeah?
I have one already.
Say again?
I have one already. I know about one.
That is great. So you're going to post that. As a matter of fact, that budget actually last year, that budget was $800, and that was even more tricky. But I increased the budget because inflation, all these things. So I'm making it easy for you. But we are going to crown the kings or queens of who made the best suggestion. Now you can go over budget, but not without some very heavy reasoning. All right. 1,000 US is about 160,000 Jamaican dollars. So kind of think of that in, you know, how easy is it to swallow a pill of spending that amount of money, especially if you really don't need to. All right. Now the way how you're going to give me this is you're going to actually use the website and scroll down, and you're going to use you're going to submit the class activity here, and this we're going to use for next week's class. All right. Now when you submit your specs, I'm going to drop it on this list, and I am going to tell you whether it is a good choice, an okay choice, or just not recommended. All right. And the good thing is that we can learn from each other. And for those of us that are planning to buy computers, we can learn from each other to see which ones are good and which is bad. So we will look at that in next week class. All right. So that is our second item of the day, right? We spoke a little bit about the tools that you guys are going to need to use. All right. Now, the last item for the day has to do with meeting you guys, right? You guys are all new faces to me. And as a matter of fact, I am not even seeing the faces. And nowadays, I don't really encourage you to even turn on your camera because it will eat so much of your bandwidth and then the video feed is going to get really blurry. So what we are going to do is that I want you guys to head over to the class website and I want you to click on the class whiteboard link. When you click on that, it's going to bring you into the whiteboard. Now, for some of you, when you come onto the board, and I can see some of you popping up now, right, when you come onto the board, I might see, and if you're looking at my screen now, you're seeing that I'm seeing you as visiting. Now, there are some persons that their actual name will come up, and there are others that will just come up as a kind of a random name. And the reason for that is that what you need to do is to sign up for Mirrorboard, get an account, and that will give you a name, right? When you sign up, I want to encourage you to try using your UTech email. When you go to mirrorboard.com, you can go to login or you can go to sign up free. But instead of the signing up right then and there, I want you guys to go to, let's go back to the site, go to pricing, right? And if you scroll down, you will see, here we go, education, right? And I want you guys to see if you can get a free student board because you get some nice features when you apply as a student. Though it's only for 2 years, but you know, you can always just use a different email and re-up. Actually, no, because you have to use your UTech email to get this, actually. So it kind of sucks that it's for 2 years, but it's up to you. You can try out the student version or you can sign up for free. When you sign up for free, it's going to limit you to 3 boards though. So keep that in mind. Now, when you do that, then your name will show up. Let me get back to my board here. Your name is going to show up here. Now, what I want us to do now, our final activity for the day, and if you pan over here, you will see where we have already started this process where we have a picture, preferably an interesting picture, not a boring picture. We don't want like a licensed picture. At the same time, we don't want any outlandish picture, just an ordinary profile pic so that we can kind of put a face to the names, especially for me. I want you to tell me the programs that you have used before and the program that you are most excited to learn about. All right. And the way how you're going to do that, some of you might be new to Mirrorboard. What you're going to do is over on the left hand side here, you're going to go to frame and you're going to choose letter. And when you do that, oops, let me do that again, frame and letter size, you're going to drag out that. You just place it there. Look for a photo on your computer, drag it onto the board. Then you're going to go for text and you can just drag text here. This text is really small, so I can just make it bigger. There we go. And that's it. I just want you to, oh, and I want you to also name the frame. So you want to double click here and you want to put your name here as well, right? And I want you to basically, well, we're going to start that down here. No, not over there. We're going to start that down here. Let's do that below this line. There we go. So we're going to start that down here. So Shamar, we're going to move you all the way down here. And you're basically going to do the same thing that you're going to continue what we're doing here, right? So this is going to kind of introduce us a little bit to Mirrorboard, which is a tool that you're going to use throughout the rest of the computing modules. And it also gives us a nice window into knowing who our classmates are, especially for me. If you want, you can even put your nickname. All right, I've put mine there, which is Brain, which is what they used to call me, because, you know, my name is Brian. So if you put the A before the I, you get Brain, you know. And I was kind of a computer geek, so I guess it's fitting, right? And that's essentially what we're going to do.
Sir?
Yeah?
Add a new board again.
You had a new board by going over here to Frame.
Oh, okay.
Then pick one and just drag it out on your screen.
All right.
Godfrey, you have a question.
It was about the discrete.
Oh yeah, man.
I was asking you how you find that on your laptop. That's an existing laptop.
That is a good question. Okay, I'm going to answer your question in two ways, because I just realized sometimes when you go on Amazon, they don't tell you, right? So how you can know is if your computer says in some description, it says that it's integrated, then that means it's not discrete, right? Which is bad. If it says that it is dedicated, that is the same as saying it's discrete. Here is the catch. Usually, when they do not tell you what it is, more than likely it's integrated, right? So it's like it's more than likely the worst. Now, for your computer, if you want to know if your computer is discrete or not, well, a good way you can find that out is to go to your task manager, actually. And when you go to your task manager, I kind of scroll down here, you will normally see the name of your card, which is right here, right? Now, usually, okay, like my video card here is a GeForce, it's a RTX 3080, right? Anybody remember the whole power thing, how it goes? So the first digit is the generation, right? The first two. And the last two is the power. So it is 80, right? The highest this goes to is 90. Now, if you are not going to find a RTX 3080 as an integrated card, so right away, when a card says that it is an RTX in NVIDIA, or I don't really know what AMD is because I don't have an AMD card. But once it is not one of these, once it's not a GTX or a RTX, highly likely it's integrated. That's how you kind of know. You can even Google it and it will tell you.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Oh, that brings me to another interesting point now that you asked that question. If you should check on a laptop, right? So all All right, I don't have my laptop ready to share at the moment. But if you have a laptop, forgive the noise if you hear the noise in the background. It's just these dogs. Okay, hold on. Hold on, come on. There we go. Right. Most laptops nowadays has a discrete and a dedicated video card, right? Which I want to show you an example of that. If I can just get over to my computer here.
Sir, I was wondering about that, you know.
Right.
When I went into the task manager, I went to the same thing and I saw two of them. Well, no, I went into my device manager and I saw two things.
Right. So,
it's 8 p.m.
Come on. I'm trying to share my screen here. But you're just not giving, it's just not giving me a chance to do that. Okay, I'm seeing stuff happening. That's good. That's good, guys. Keep it coming. Okay. I'm getting somewhere. All right. Let's see if this thing will work. Okay, yeah, it's coming on. All right, I've gotten somewhere. Okay. All right, so for example, if I should look at this laptop that I have here, right? And this is my trusty laptop. Oh, not there. And I look in my task manager. Let's look here. kind of see if I can zoom in. All right, there we go. So this laptop has two. It has a Intel HUD Graphics 630 and it has a RTX 2060, right? So most laptops nowadays, well, all laptops will have an integrated graphics because this is what will make you save battery life, right? And what happens is that the integrated graphics runs primarily, and then when you demand power, if you're playing a game using Photoshop or doing Lumia and anything like that, it will automatically switch over to the dedicated graphics. So you can even look at my graphics now. You can see that primarily it's the Intel, it is the integrated graphics that's doing all the work. And that is because I'm not doing everything that's graphically heavy. So this is how the laptop saves you on battery life, because it will use the integrated one before using the heavy duty one. But some laptops will come with only the integrated. And look at the name of the integrated. It says Intel R. I mean, it's not Radeon and it's not, NVIDIA. So if it's anything that looks weird like this, then yeah, it's integrated. All right. So that's just a quick kind of example of one. All right. So I'm going to give us some time to kind of get this activity filled out here.
Sir, this is you like right now?
Yeah, this is something we're doing now.
Excellent, sir.
This is how we will meet each other. Like, you can know that I use these programs. Well, I probably use way more programs, but I'll add more to it. But more importantly, I get to meet you.
You don't spend when it come.
All right. So, of course, we have to keep a watch on our mics. Make sure that our mics are muted when not used. All right. All right. So, and then we're going to have a look at this next class. I can get to have an idea of the type of things that you're looking forward to learning, or maybe the type of things that you have already learned. Right? I think this class is becoming a bit more fancy with the way how they do this. I mean, I'm not grading you for using a nice font, but the important thing is just the information. All right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
If we are finished, you can leave.
Yes, we are at the end of this session, so you are free to go. Our next class will be on Monday, and that will be a lecture. We'll look a little bit on the computers that you guys selected. That activity needs to be finished before Monday, by the way. All right? Okay, and you submit that using the class website.
All right, until then, sir.
All right. So take care, guys. As soon as you finish putting your profile here, you are free to go. If I don't see you again, I'll see you next Monday.